Thank you, Kevin. Hi, I'm Ryan Clark, and my talk today is titled, What Makes an Indie Hit? How to Choose the Right Design. Here is a quick overview of the talk. I'll do a brief introduction, then I will get into the strategy itself with subsections for hooks, market analysis, and then promotion. But first, who the hell am I? Captain Picard demands to know. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes giving you a ton of advice, but why should you guys listen to any of this advice? I became a full-time indie developer back in 2004, and since then I've made 10 games, 8 of which were profitable, with 3 grossing in the millions, and I have an explicit strategy that I've used to achieve this level of consistency, and that's what I'm going to discuss in this talk. So let's get started. This is a screenshot from a game called Airscape: The Fall of Gravity. One of its developers posted an article on Gamasutra discussing its poor sales. And it seems that despite everyone giving them positive reviews and feedback, the game only sold a few hundred copies. The developer concluded that a good game isn't good enough, and I wholeheartedly agree. Unfortunately, Airscape just doesn't have any big hooks, nothing that really grabs you. It's a good game in a sea of good games. I think the method used by many newcomers will generally produce good games like this, but not noteworthy games. It's kind of common to take a look at good game X and make Game X but better, or Game X but in space. But what should we be doing instead? By my estimates, 95% of indie games don't make a profit. So if you're not confident in being able to explain why the hits hit and the others did not, you shouldn't be confident in your game's chances either. You need a reliable strategy if you want to consistently be in that profitable 5%. You need to become adept at identifying game ideas that satisfy these 3 criteria. They need to sit in the overlap of something that you want to make and hopefully will still enjoy making even after working on it for a year or more, and something that you're able to make, which means you need to become skilled at estimating scope, budget, and the abilities of your team, and something that you're confident will make money. So how do we identify ideas that will satisfy all 3 of these criteria? Here are the steps that I take for any given game design. I evaluate the quantity and quality of the game's hooks, I evaluate the viability of the market for similar games, and I consider how I can describe and promote the game. So let's start with hooks. To be successful these days, it helps a great deal if your game stands out. If you want people to remember your game, to talk about your game, and to write articles about your game, it needs to have a hook, preferably multiple hooks. In music, a hook is a short riff or melody or phrase that really grabs the listener and gets stuck in their head. In games, a hook is similar, but hooks in games often take effect before the game is even played. The hook is something interesting about the game that compels people to try it or to talk about it. By way of illustration, I'll describe some of the hooks from Crypt of the Necrodancer, since the design fortunately provided quite a few. First, the game's name is a pun, and some people hate puns, but some love them, and at the very least, the name is memorable. Rock Paper Shotgun said, Crypt of the Necrodancer is called Crypt of the Necrodancer, which already makes it incontrovertibly the greatest game of all time. The game's core mechanic is also a hook. When you hear the term roguelike rhythm game, it kind of sounds impossible or crazy, which immediately gets people interested. The game also has an excellent hooky soundtrack by a well-known composer, Danny Baranowski, which I heard that he showed up and imitated me earlier this morning. Unfortunately, I missed that. Star power itself is a hook. That's why celebrity endorsements in advertising actually work. And our singing shopkeeper is also a fan favorite that gets people talking, but the point is the people on your team themselves, they can be hooks. The art, while it is pixel art, it has personality. People often comment on the hip-thrusting dancing skeletons. And we even had a hook at conventions like PAX. You can play the game with dance pads. This is unusual, so the dance pads at our booths always drew a crowd. and the crowds in turn got the attention of any members of the press who happened to be walking by. And lastly, in my opinion, we have good, catchy trailers, and I'll discuss trailers a bit later on. Not all hooks are created equal, of course. I think Necrodancer's core mechanic and the excellent music are probably its most powerful hooks. But the more hooks you have and the more compelling each hook is, the greater your chance of snagging any given person's interest. So I think it makes sense when you're trying to come up with, to decide which game design to go with, to wait until you have a design that stands out along as many axes as possible. Ideally, you want every facet of your game design to be unique and compelling in some way. The gameplay, the art, the audio, the name, the story, the dev team, everything. So you need to become adept at evaluating hooks. A great way of doing this is to examine the hooks of other successful and unsuccessful indie games. So let's take a look at Darkest Dungeon. This is awesome Necrodancer promo art that was actually created by Darkest Dungeon's amazingly talented artist Chris Bourassa in the Darkest Dungeon style. Now, Darkest Dungeon's design, with its exploration of what it would really feel like to be in a terrifying dungeon, is perfect. Everyone immediately agrees, you're right, it would be horrible to be locked in a dark dungeon full of monsters. This is the first true dungeon crawler. And that concept alone is a massive hook. The gritty art style is some seriously masterful work, as you can see here, and it's perfectly suited to the game and to Steam's audience. The game also has a narrator with an astoundingly good voice, and the game's soundtrack was created by an actual rock star. Stuart Chatwood was a member of the group The Tea Party that was well known in North America in the 90s. And as I mentioned with Necrodancer, star power helps. And as with Necrodancer, I think that the trailers themselves are hooky, creative, and compelling. I'm friends with the developers of Darkest Dungeon, so I got to try it prior to its launch, and my analysis of its hooks and target market led me to believe that it was going to be a big hit. Its hooks felt significantly more compelling than Necrodancer's. And before the launch, the two founders, Tyler and Chris, were not sure how well it was going to do, and everyone feels like this pre-launch. But I told them that I would shoot myself if it didn't outsell Necrodancer. And you can guess the outcome based on the fact that I'm standing here now. But sure, a question like how strong are these hooks can only be answered subjectively, but if you practice analyzing the hooks of newly launched games and then look at the results afterwards to see if your instincts were right, you'll begin to develop a feel for it. So next, let's talk about market analysis, but don't panic. Market analysis is not boring drudge work. I actually really enjoy it as I get to watch a lot of fun trailers and play lots of interesting new games. Market analysis is all about trends. Is the market for a certain type of game trending up, down, or steady? How big is that market? How competitive is the market? And what are the reasons for the underlying trend? Knowing how strong a given market is now is helpful, but only if you understand the trends can you predict how strong that market might be when your game finally launches a year or two down the road. I'll come back to this slide in just a minute. So in order to identify trends, I keep a close eye on the Steam top seller charts, as well as the list of new releases. In fact, I do this on a weekly Twitch stream, and I'll post the link at the end of this talk. The goal is to get a sense for both the types of new games that are selling well and the types of games that are selling poorly. By paying attention to these charts, you'll begin to identify trends. For example, you might think, New Game X is very similar to New Game Y that came out 2 years ago, and in fact seems to be of higher quality. But it's selling significantly worse. Perhaps this genre is falling out of favor. And if you then see that all games in that genre are selling more poorly than predecessors, you've likely identified a change in trend. So here are just a few specific trends that I've identified during the last year or two of watching the charts. Puzzle adventure games are trending down, while walking simulators are trending up. Arcade twin-stick shooters are scraping the bottom, while survival games are soaring. And multiplayer versus games are also trending upwards. And if you don't stay on top of the trends, you can easily make costly mistakes. For example, if you really enjoy arcade twin-stick shooters and you remember that back in the day Geometry Wars seemed to be a big hit on Xbox Live Arcade, you might think, yeah, twin-stick shooters can make lots of money, but in 2016 that doesn't seem to be the case. Assault Android Cactus is a critically acclaimed twin-stick shooter with awesome reviews on Steam, and it deserves to be a hit, but unfortunately it's not. However, there are roguelike cousins of the twin-stick shooter genre that have succeeded, like The Binding of Isaac, Nuclear Throne, and Enter the Gungeon. So staying on top of trends will make these sort of distinctions clearer to you and prevent you from making costly mistakes. But in order to have even more confidence in our analysis, we should also try to understand the factors that support these trends. Let's take survival sim games as an example. I believe that the strength of survival sim trend is here to stay for a number of reasons. First, The majority of human evolution took place in an environment where we were hunting and gathering and struggling to survive. And modern lifestyles share none of those characteristics. We sit behind desks all day. But obviously, we still retain many of those base instincts from that era. As a result, survival games allow players to experience some strong feelings that other genres can't deliver. The survival genre is also fairly flexible and can support many aesthetics like 2D, 3D, first person, third person, God view, even ASCII like Dwarf Fortress. So there's plenty of room for innovation and new types of games. Survival games tend to have high retention, and the trend on Steam is towards games with high retention selling well. And they also lend themselves well to online multiplayer, which is another trend on the rise. They're also very streamable and YouTubeable, which is another trend on the rise. And most of the original survival games of this era are still selling well, and some are the top-selling games of all on Steam in recent years. And new successful survival games do come out all the time. It seems that the market is so massive that it cannot be saturated. But in contrast, it seems that puzzle adventure games, that trend's on the decline, largely because that genre is on the opposite side of many of the sub-trends I just mentioned. Puzzle adventure games have low replayability and low retention. They're not multiplayer. They're not favored by streamers and YouTubers because getting stumped often doesn't make for entertaining viewing. You should also take a look at the size and composition of the market you're interested in. Are there enough fans of this type of genre to generate the sales results you need to survive? Has even the highest grossing game produced enough revenue? If not, you might be in trouble, or perhaps you'll get lucky and be the first to popularize a new genre or discover a new genre. And that's how mega hits like Minecraft occur, but I would not rely on that happening to you. And now we'll move on to the final part of our strategy. We've covered hooks and market analysis, so it's time to talk about promoting your game. And I've heard numerous indie devs say, I hate promoting my game, I just want to make games. I don't want to promote them. I can certainly understand that frustration, but I also think that when game design and promotion go hand in hand, the task becomes much less onerous. You enjoy applying your creativity to game design so that players will enjoy your game, right? Well, promoting your game is analogous. Use those creative skills to come up with promotions that people will enjoy, or design a game that promotes itself. Now, assuming that you have a hooky game idea in mind, you need to plan how to communicate those hooks via your trailers and store page text blurbs. If the game's hooks do not translate well to trailers and text descriptions, you'll be relying on people playing your game, experiencing its hooks, and then spreading awareness of the game through their own enthusiasm. And if even they can't put your game into words, their attempts to others may also fail. So some of the industry's biggest hits, again like Minecraft, spread primarily through word of mouth, but basing your promotional strategy on Minecraft-level virality is unwise. If you're unsure of the strength of your game's hooks, you should test them. With Necrodancer, we did this by putting out a very early teaser trailer and by demoing the game at PAX. And despite being a very early version of the game, our trailer gathered quite a few views and was covered pretty widely by the press. So that gave me the confidence to spend some savings to take the game to PAX. And at PAX, we also had great reactions from fans, but I would caution you against listening to what people say. You should listen instead to what they do. No matter how good or bad a game is, they'll likely say, I had fun, and then they'll give the controller back to you. But are they actually having fun when they play? You need to become adept at reading body language. And are they crowding around your booth? Are they actually coming back repeatedly? Are they literally taking out their wallets and throwing them at you? Because we actually had someone do that to us at PAX. So a few other promotional tips. I was on a panel about early access at GDC, and the moderator was a journalist, and he was asking us, how do we make our launches noteworthy? But since he was a journalist, I turned the tables and asked him, what makes a newsworthy story for him? And he said, a human angle. The headline of, our game has launched, is not very exciting. Thousands of games launch every year, but if you can come up with something more personal and compelling than that, you stand a much better chance of getting coverage. Also, we are indie, we are not big companies, so we can provide a human angle in a way that AAA companies cannot. And if your game isn't going to stand out from most of the competition, a convention may not be worth your time and money. You lose weeks of time due to prep work, the show itself, and then fatigue after, and then getting reacquainted with your project when you get back to work. But if your game stands out, like Necrodancer did, then it could be very well worth it. But there's more to conventions than just getting attention anyway. I've learned so much from all the devs that I've met that I think that's the most valuable thing of all. But after the game itself, your trailers are by far your most important promotional tool. This is a sweet trailer, huh? Do not leave trailer planning to the last minute. Trailers are vital and should have ample time and attention paid to them. Don't make your trailer an afterthought at the end of an exhausting push towards launch. When you launch a game on Steam or console, your trailer will be the first thing people see, and if it does a poor job of conveying the awesomeness of your game, your sales are going to suffer. So here are some of the things that I do when planning a trailer. First, I think it's really important to start early. When you first come up with the design of your game, think about what a potential trailer could be like. And if you can't think of an effective way to express that design's hooks in a trailer, then maybe it's not the right design. I think it's also important to keep it very short. I see so many indie trailers that last for 2 minutes or more. I think you should only show the most exciting and hooky parts of your games really fast and then stop, preferably a minute or less. You don't want to let the excitement level drop. People might stop watching. You need to just show them, and you don't need to show them every feature in the game. You just want to show them awesome things and then stop, leaving them wanting to know more. You should also get to the action quickly. People don't really want to see your company logo at the beginning of your trailer. They want to learn about the game. If you want to include your logo, you should do it at the end or maybe partway through. And at Steam Dev Days, just last week, Valve suggested that you test the first 5 seconds of your trailer muted to see how visually appealing it is, because most Steam users have trailers initially muted by default. And if they're quickly browsing through their discovery queue, you might only have 5 muted seconds of video to grab their attention. I think that showing review quotes and accolades at the start is smart, as they let viewers know that this is a trailer they should pay attention to. But even still, you want to keep it to just a second or two. The worst thing your trailer can do is bore a viewer such that they stop watching. I think you should also think hard about your music. In general, you want to leave the player energized, not feeling sleepy. You don't want them to go have a nap. You want them to buy your game right away. Also, you should be creative. As a game developer, you must be a creative person, so use some of that creativity to craft a unique trailer that has hooks of its own. And last, I recommend that you hire a professional to help you. Since trailers are such a vital part of the sales pitch for your game, I think it makes sense to hire someone who can really make your trailer shine. We always work with Marlon Wiebe, as have many other indies, and I cannot recommend him highly enough. So to conclude my strategy for creating consistently profitable indie games and maybe the occasional hit, I'd like to refute the often repeated claim that ideas are a dime a dozen. Sure, most ideas are a dime a dozen, but good ideas are extremely valuable. If you can come up with an idea that has great hooks, a viable target market, is something that will promote itself, and is something that you're excited to make, and is something that you have the skills and resources to make, then you have something extremely valuable on your hands. You have the seed for a game that is very likely to be profitable and may possibly be a hit. Don't let anyone tell you that it's worthless. Instead, guard it jealously. The hardest part of being a successful developer, in my opinion, is not making the game. Being a talented game developer is a prerequisite for success, but it's far from sufficient. The hardest part is coming up with a design idea that actually satisfies all of those conditions. 99% of ideas will fall short, and in the indie space, the technological barriers have melted away. We're now no longer competing technologically, we're competing creatively, which is awesome. And you should be honest with yourself when evaluating your hooks, and compare your design to the designs of other games. If your core concept is your core concept as compelling as the concepts of Papers, Please or Darkest Dungeon, or your art and music and feel as amazing as Hyper Light Drifter, games like these serve as great measuring sticks and will help you to put your own design in perspective. You don't need to equal or surpass those games, of course, but if your design is nowhere close, it may be wise to return to the drawing board. So yes, I actually try to analyze the revenue potential of a game idea before I create that game. And to some, this may seem crass, or it might appear that it could result in soulless games. And I understand that concern, but just because I use this method does not mean that I'll be creating games that I'm loath to make. I just need to come up with so many designs that I eventually stumble across one that ignites my passion while still having solid revenue potential. I'm aware that there are many folks out there who make just 100% whatever they want with no concern for revenue, and I respect that. But with a wife and 2 kids, I'm a little more risk averse. So I come up with as many ideas as I can and evaluate them until I find just the right one. So, in conclusion, now that we've discussed my strategy for using hooks, market analysis, and promotion for creating a successful indie game, and I know it's tough out there these days, but it's still very possible to succeed as an independent game developer. I see one or two games on my stream each week that make millions of dollars yet are made by small teams. And I hope that you'll come away from this talk with a few more tools in your tool bag to help you find that kind of success. And I know that this isn't the only way to make successful indie games. There are many people out there doing it using entirely different methods, but I do think that this method is helpful because it has explicit steps you can follow, and if you practice it and come up with the right ideas, you can be much more confident that your games will succeed. So that's the end of my talk, but if you'd like to know more, I occasionally post similar content on my Gamma Sutra blog, so drop me a follow on Twitter and I'll keep you posted. And as I said, I do a weekly stream on Twitch every Friday where I discuss this method in more detail. So I hope you'll join me so that we can spot these market trends together. Thank you.